Though it feels like we barely had a winter, spring is officially here, and so it's time for another visit from our resident astronomer, Dr. Chris Palma from the Penn State Department of Astronomy and Astrophysics. He's also Associate Dean for undergraduate students in the Eberly College of Science. Thanks for joining us again, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. We often talk about interesting research coming out of your department, but recently some of that actually made national news. It has to do with an unexpected discovery about big galaxies. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this one was really exciting to me. We know that when we are looking at objects, distant objects in a telescope, if something's a million light years away, we're seeing the light from it from a million years ago, so we're seeing it as it was a million years ago. So every time we build a newer telescope that lets us see more and more distant, we're able to see earlier in the universe's history. So when we see these distant galaxies, we keep expecting that we're going to finally see early enough after the Big Bang that we're going to see galaxies forming. And what this group found was only a few 100 million years after the Big Bang, you already had fully grown galaxies. So we were expecting baby pictures, and we got fully grown adult pictures. And so it really changes our understanding of how fast the universe was able to grow a fully adult galaxy. And so very, very dramatic change of our understanding.
That is really cool. Yeah. We've also often talked about these so-called near-Earth asteroids. These are these space rocks that pass close to Earth. Now a newly discovered one supposedly has a very, very small chance of hitting the Earth on Valentine's Day in 2046. What's the deal about predicting the path of these things?
Yeah. I honestly analogize it a little bit to hurricane paths, right? When you have that early data, you're predicting where is it going to be a day from now or 2 days from now, right? So we get a couple of pictures and we predict where it's going to be a month, a year. And based on how many pictures you have and how good they are, your predictions might say it's going to be here or here, and slight changes in where it's going to be in 2030 or 2035 make it hard for us to say exactly where it's going to be in 2045, right? Okay. So every picture we get in the meantime lets us narrow down where it will be, and we're pretty sure it's not actually going to hit us.
Yeah, I'm planning on a calm Valentine's Day in 2046. I also saw, and speaking of new discoveries, a new comet has been discovered that might be a big deal in the sky next year. But you know, it seems to me that this often happens and then it turns out to be a flop. I mean, why is it so hard to know?
Honestly, there's another analogy to weather, right? So these are ice balls, and as they get close to the sun, what happens is that ice turns to vapor. And the sunlight reflecting off of that vapor determines how bright the comet is. So if you get a lot of vapor, it's very bright. If you get slightly less, it's not quite as bright. And that is very, very hard to predict accurately. So we can guess that the comet might be pretty bright, but more often than not, they're not quite as bright as we thought.
You know, water vapor is hard to predict in the atmosphere. Now it's hard to predict on comets. Most folks know that if you want to get a good look at the sky, you need to get away from light. Go where it's really dark. But I guess there's another kind of interference that can make it tough to observe, and this is with radio telescopes. Tell us about that.
Sure. Well, in our heads, whenever we hear the word radio, we think sound, right? You turn on your radio in your car, you listen to a radio station. But what's actually going on is that is light, right? There's light being transmitted from a tower to the radio in your car. And we use radio telescopes to detect radio waves from space. But cell phone towers, radio stations, the Wi-Fi in your home, all of that generates radio waves that interfere with the radio waves from space. So astronomers who study that, they just want us to be a little more careful. Can we design electronics that just give us a little bit of a window into the universe?
Okay. I remember as a kid, I knew exactly how many moons each planet had, and I remember Jupiter had the most. But then somewhere along the line, Saturn took the lead, and now Jupiter is back with 92. I mean, come on, do we even know what a moon is?
Yeah, I will argue that we don't, right? Because you're so used to in science there being these very precise definitions. If you try to define the word moon, you can broadly say, well, it's an object that goes around a planet, right? But when you try to get into the weeds of explaining that precisely, it's hard. So for example, if something was that big, is it a moon, or does it have to be the size of... So these moons that were just found are very small, and so the smaller they are, the harder they are to find. So it's okay to call them moons. It's okay that we're finding more of them, and again, as our telescopes get better, we're going to keep finding more.
92 moons. I'm sorry. To close, what are you looking at in the night sky in the coming weeks or months that you think others might be interested in?
Well, since the last time we met, you probably read a lot about how there are these beautiful planets. And so a few weeks back, Venus and Jupiter were really close to each other. And I'm sorry I didn't get to tell everybody about that before.
We did.
Yes. But they're still in the sky. They're just much further apart. So I would still encourage people, if you never got to see them, look in the western sky and you'll see these two wonderful bright planets. Then turn around and see if you can find the Big Dipper. And so the Big Dipper is going to look upside down. And I always try to tell people, use the two stars at the top of the Big Dipper, and they will point like an arrow to the North Star. And so if you've never seen the North Star before, try to challenge yourself to find it.
All right. Chris Palma, always good to see you.
Thank you.
And we will be back in a moment with more.